Keeper of the Lost City's Everblaze, Chapter 57. A scroll arrived the next morning, bearing the council's official seal. Sophie had a horrible flip-floppy feeling. Since the deadline King Dimitar had given the council was almost up. But when she mustered the courage to break the seal, she found an invitation to an event at Foxfire that evening. As far as Sophie could tell, it appeared to be some sort of hybrid between the inauguration of Master Leto and an official council assembly, which sounded like a terrifying combination. But Grady didn't seem concerned. They've always done an inauguration with a new principal, he said, pouring himself a cup of some sort of strange red tea, and the counselors are always there, just like they are during the opening ceremonies. Remember, Foxfire is a noble academy. The council is part of their celebrations. Right, but it says... She picked up the scroll, reading directly from one of the paragraphs. Further updates will also be delivered by the council, and the event will conclude with an important public announcement. Is that normal? No, Grady admitted. But this is a strange time for the council. Both their official amphitheater and their tribunal hall burned in the Everblaze. They also have a brand new counselor, a terrified population demanding answers, King Dimitar threatening war, a city to rebuild, and somewhere in there they also need to inaugurate a new principal. I'm guessing they figured since we'd all be gathering up, they might as well double up and address some of the people's questions. I guess, Sophie bumbled, still staring at the scroll. You're worried they're going to announce your punishment, aren't you? Grady asked. Shouldn't I be? I mean, doesn't it seem like the perfect place? It does. He dragged out the word as he rubbed a crease on his forehead. Listen, Sophie, I haven't wanted to tell you this, but there's been a bit of drama surrounding your upcoming sentence. A rather vocal group of people have seized it upon themselves as maybe an opportunity to have you expelled. All the blood drained from her face. From Foxfire? Grady nodded. They know that you were indirectly involved with the fire, and then they watched you almost cause a war with King Dimitar. They're scared, Sophie. And when people are scared, they do crazy, heartless things, like blame an innocent girl for an impossibly complicated situation and try to keep her away from their children. Sophie stared at her sleeve, flicking away a piece of lint. Do you think the council's going to listen to them? No, I don't. Alden's met with them several times, and he's confident that they have a different punishment in mind. And what punishment is that? She asked, no longer able to breathe. Unfortunately, I have no idea. They're being extremely tight-lipped, since they need to make sure King Dimitar approves it before the sentence is given. Alden still feels that it's likely involved in time in the sanctuary, but he also warned me there might be something else in addition, and judging by this invitation, I'm guessing it'll be a sort of public reproval. Do I want to know what that means? She asked, trying not to envision stocks and whips. Basically, they deliver your punishment in front of everyone, along with a stern lecture. That's it? Grady laughed, and here I thought you'd be panicking. Well, I don't love the idea of being humiliated in front of my entire school, but compared to being expelled, it's definitely better, Grady agreed, pulling her in for a hug. She rested her head on his chest, letting the sound of his steady heartbeat calm her racing pulse. Then Grady had to ruin the moment by adding, It's probably going to be a pretty humiliating experience, though, Sophie. People see you as a threat to the peace and safety of our world. If the council's not going to give them what they want, they're going to have to come down very hard on you to prove that they're still under control. I promise, everything is going to be okay, but I think we need to prepare for the fact that tonight is going to be a very long night. The crowd at Foxfire was even larger than Sophie had been expecting. It leaked out the ornate golden doors into the main amphitheater, where the inauguration was being held, and spilled into the grassy courtyard, crushing the bushes, shaped like the different mascots, and blocking the path. A tiny, less than nice part of Sophie wished that the glaring people had accidentally found one of the influxers and triggered an epic stink blast, especially when she spotted Morella standing with Stina. There was a pocket of space between them, like neither girl truly wanted to be with the other, but when Morella noticed Sophie watching her, she tossed her hair and turned away. Sandor kept a loose grip on Sophie's wrist, leading her straight to the security checkpoint outside the main entrance. A dozen elves in bright orange capes were scanning everyone's registry pendants and dividing them into 2 lines, one leading to the arena's seats, one to the floor level. Only noble families were given access to the floor, but not all of them. As far as Sophie could tell, there seemed to be no reason for the division. Her family was sent to the floor. The crowd was thinner there, filled mostly with stern-looking elves dressed in very fancy capes. So Sophie was surprised when she recognized a familiar face. "Dex?" she called, running over to his seat in the second row near the center. He was sitting right behind the seats marked for her, and his whole family was with him, even the triplets. Sophie had never seen Kessler and Julien dressed so fancy, though their capes were still far simpler than the finery that surrounded them. "I didn't know you'd be here." "Thought I'd be up in the common area, didn't you?" he asked, his wide grin making it clear that he didn't mind if she had. "Not anymore. They stopped us on our way up and told us that because one of my inventions will be featured prominently in the ceremony, they wanted me nearby in case they needed any assistance." "That's awesome," Sophie told him, knowing it was the reaction he was expecting. But why would the council want to demonstrate a weapon? Kessler patted Dex on the back, his pride obvious, though he still looked like he'd much rather be in his lab coat, whipping up some sort of crazy concoction. "Oh, and before I forget," Dex said, glancing over his shoulder, as he dug into his pocket of his blue, jeweled cape. "I finally had the chance to fix this." He handed over her iPod, which now had a small, silver triangle sticking out of the base. "I still don't get why you need this, but that receiver will pick up pretty much any kind of signal you want, and it made a few tweaks to the way it works, because, well, man, that thing was slow." He touched the screen, tapped one icon, and instantly, the internet loaded. "That's what you needed, right?" "Yeah, it's perfect." Sophie shoved it into her pocket before anyone could notice, though Sandor had already seen, and he was giving her the, "Do you really think this is the time or place to have human technology out in plain sight?" look. "You're the best." "I know." She elbowed him, and he laughed, but he turned serious as he studied the packed audience above them. "I heard the counselors say something about an announcement regarding you. Everything okay?" "I hope so," she said with a smile. But what little she'd choked down for dinner turned to prickles in her stomach. Despite Grady's assurance, she couldn't help worrying that the council was going to expel her. That wasn't something they needed a unanimous vote for, only the majority. And she wasn't sure she had 7 supporters. She wasn't sure she even knew 7 of the councilors' names. Still, it had helped that Dame Melina was the newest member of the council. She'd seen firsthand how well Sophie did at school. Surely she'd be able to come to her defense? "It's time to take your seats," a snooty-sounding elf told them, shuffling past them in a silver and black cape. "The inauguration will begin in a moment." Sophie had barely settled into her chair next to Edeline, which was also conveniently in front of the steps to the stage, when the bell chimed a slow, tinkling peal, and the counselors and their bodyguards appeared. They weren't wearing their usual gowns and capes. Instead, they wore identical silver suit-like garments, with simple, fitted jackets and tailored pants. Their long silver cloaks had hoods, which they all tossed back in unison, revealing matching silver circlets. The female counselors even had their hair pulled back, making it hard to tell which counselor was which. The only one easy to recognize was Counselor Emery, whose dark skin gave him away, and gave him an air of importance as he welcomed everyone in the assembly. He explained that the inauguration would happen first, followed by a brief speech from the counselors, which would conclude an announcement. and Sophie was pretty sure he glanced at her when he said that part. Sophie reached for Edeline's hand as the counselor stepped back, leaving room for Magnate Leto to move to the center of the stage. His orange robes were a vivid flame among the muted silver of the council, and when the floor beneath him lifted to create a pedestal, he looked like a torch that suddenly had an unearthly green glow as the lights dimmed to the auditorium. Foxfire, Sophie whispered, realizing the glow was the same shade as the luminous mushrooms the academy was named after. No matter how many times the elves explained to her the illumination in the darkness world analogy, she would never stop thinking it was weird to have a school named after a glowing fungus. Counselor Emery's booming voice snapped her out of her spore-related musings, and he unrolled a golden scroll, reading it in a long, boring oath for Magnate Leto to repeat, most of which Sophie tuned out. All she really caught was the final stanza, and only because Counselor Emery had raised his voice to make it echo around the auditorium. Do you swear to put the safety and success of your prodigies above all else, even your own life? Yes, Magnate Leto called, lowering into a deep bow, as polite applause filled the arena. One by one, the counselors dipped their heads, paying their respect to the new principal of Foxfire. And when they reached the last of the 12, Dame Elena, she stepped forward, holding a narrow scepter with a glowing orange F on the end. For a horrible second, Sophie thought they were going to brand an F onto Magnate Leto's skin, like a farmer did to cattle. Instead, Dame Elena pressed the glowing end against the center of the pedestal and turned it like a key, making the room rain with glittering orange sparks. The sight should have been breathtaking, but it reminded Sophie too much of the Everblaze, and from the squeamish looks in the counselors' faces, she clearly wasn't the only one fighting flashbacks. The key to Foxfire, Adeline whispered, as the pedestal lowered, and Dame Elena handed the scepter to Magnate Leto. He dropped to his knees and vowed that the light would never go dark on his watch. Then he pressed the key into the floor, and the room flooded with light, so bright that Sophie rubbed her stinging eyes. By the time her vision cleared, the pedestal was gone, and Magnate Leto had stepped back into the shadows. Under normal circumstances, our festivals would end here, Counselor Emery said, as the counselors moved to the center of the stage. But we all know our circumstances are hardly normal at the moment. We thank you for your patience and trust, and we're happy to announce that the gnomes have reported to us this morning that the cleanup in Eternalia is now complete. Every speck of ash and refuse has now been washed away. A truly incredible gift these remarkable creatures have given us, and we all owe them a debt of gratitude. In the months ahead, we will owe a similar debt to the dwarves for their help rebuilding what we've lost. And we also owe a debt to the goblins for standing on our side, ready to serve and protect. All these creatures support us, not because they're generous, compassionate beings, but because they rely on us for something as well. Something that recently we've been failing to deliver. He paused for a second, letting the audience lean forward in their seats before he told them, peace. The word triggered a murmur in the crowd, and Counselor Emery waited for them to fall silent before he continued. We did not ask for the role of peacekeepers on this complicated, ever-changing planet, and yet it is a role we are born to take. Our unique gifts and abilities have enabled us to secure stability amongst our world, as well as the 5 protected kingdoms for millennia. And despite recent turmoil, our role has not changed. Our rule will not fall to threats or rebellion, nor will we stand back and let insubordination go unpunished. Sophie was pretty sure every eye in the room was on her at this point. But she didn't scoot down in her chair. Her legs didn't even tremble as she stood at Counselor Emery's command. But her heart was pounding so hard it hurt as she climbed the stairs and took center stage. We've heard many cries for various punishments for the child you see before you, and I can assure you we considered each one at great length. It's an extremely complicated issue. On one hand, many of the actions you are angered by were things that Sophie didn't necessarily choose. Others, wrong, were largely the result of lack of experience. We all must remember, Sophie Foster is not normal. Sophie closed her eyes as the words rattled around her brain. She knew they were true, yet somehow that made them hurt more. This child, through no fault of her own, has been given abilities she neither understands nor is able to control. Pair that with the lack of education and experience in our laws, and we have the perfect formula for disaster. But do we blame an out-of-control cart for crashing, or do we blame the driver? More murmurs and mutterings, many of them clearly blaming her, but Sophie was more freaked out by the realization that she had no idea where Emery was going with this. It didn't sound like the sort of speech that was going to end in, "We order Sophie to scoop dinosaur poop in the sanctuary for the rest of the year." Most of you have heard mention of the Black Swan group hiding in the shadows, Counselor Emery continued, starting to pace now. And many of you are aware that they're the very organization responsible for the existence of the child standing before us. Perhaps you've even heard whispers of good deeds they've done to cover the bad. Rumors of future plans meant to save us, and you probably haven't known how to feel about this information. Neither have we. Such open defiance has never existed in our world, and our inheritance desire to believe the best in our people. But that has caused us to hold back, hoping to discover the missing pieces that would plant this organization on the side of right. Instead, all we find is wrong. He turned to stare at Sophie, making it clear he included her in that wrongness, and she wished they'd given her something to hold herself steady. Her wobbly knees couldn't carry her much longer. "We promised you an announcement tonight," Emery continued, "and this is it. Our vow to you is that our primary goal is now to track down the members of this organization and punish them for their illegal actions, and we shall not rest until every last one has been captured." "What?" Sophie asked, not sure if anyone could hear her over the crowd roaring. She couldn't tell if they were cheering or complaining, but she could see Grady on his feet and Edeline moving toward him from a few seats further back. Their mouths seemed to be saying the same thing she was. "You're going after the wrong group." If Counselor Emery heard them, he ignored it. Instead, he called the crowd back to order, holding out his hand as Counselor Leora conjured a small, flat black box into them. "We realize this task we've sworn to will be no easy matter," he said, moving slowly towards Sophie. "We're hunting a group who have become extremely skilled in the art of hiding. Nevertheless, we will find them. And in the meantime, we will do everything we can to minimize the damage they've done to our world. Which is why we've created this." He opened the box, pulling out a silver circlet with 3 flat stones set into the curved pattern. Something about the design looked familiar, but Sophie's mind was spinning too fast to make the connection. It wasn't until he raised it over her head that she realized what was happening. 2 of the council's bodyguards rushed to her side, holding her in place as Counselor Emery clamped the silver band around her forehead. The circlet was Dex's telepathy restrictor. The council was taking away her abilities.